Recent months, beginning with Janet Jackson's stunt at the Super Bowl halftime show and continuing with the FCC's crackdown on indecency, tough to define, obviously, a trend marked by a decrease in civility and increase in vulgarity in our society has become a hot topic, and as witnessed by this clip from exiled radio host Bubba the Love Sponge, perhaps for good reason.
8:48, 12 in front of the top of the hour. Now, what kind of tricks are you going to do? Well, then go ahead and leave. You big get out of here. White trash, Atlanta, Georgian bunch of.
And now, here to discuss that particular piece of entertainment, or at least what it represents, as well as the greater issue of the general coarsening of our society, is Bubba the Love Sponge, which happens to be his legal name. And joining him on our panel, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the Miami Herald, Leonard Pitts, Time magazine writer and commentator Joel Stein, and filmmaker, lecturer, and former model, Dr. Gene Kilborn. Let's start with Leonard Pitts. First of all, congratulations on the Pulitzer, because it's very recent. This issue has been out there for quite some time, but it really came to a head following the Super Bowl.
Right.
Your reaction?
It seemed to me to speak to the shallowness, the general artificiality of the whole idea of shocking the public these days. It was a very manipulative moment.
You wrote that pop culture at its best has often shocked, but the shock or the discomfort came out of legitimate artistic expression.
The shock was a byproduct. The shock was a byproduct for Elvis. The shock was a byproduct for Marvin Gaye when he sang "Let's Get It On." We forget how shocking that was, and it's in the context of its time. The shock is now the point. The shock is not the byproduct. The shock is now the point. The shock is what we are going for, as opposed to we are doing something that is real and organic and is an artistic statement, and shock just happens to be the product of it.
I think that those who were annoyed by this include a lot of people who have no problem with free expression, no problem with profanity or nudity in a given context. But the crassness of this, the cynicism of it, and the incivility as represented by the idea that, hey, here's the Super Bowl, 80 million people are watching, including your grandmother and little kids, and we don't give a damn. It's right here in your face. That's what ticked people off, I think, reasonable people, more so than the flashing of a breast.
Yeah, I think what we learned is there are things we shouldn't show our parents that are just for children. We keep it on MTV, the children get to enjoy it, but once you show the parents, they get freaked out.
I thought what was much more shocking than the exposure of her breasts was the sexual assault, and I wish there had been more attention paid to that. The fact that Justin Timberlake ripped off her clothes.
Yeah, you said it so passively that her breast was exposed.
And so why not focus on that? Because there's so much sexual violence that goes on in the media these days, and that seems to be much more dangerous to our kids than that they might, God forbid, see a naked breast. And I think, the real problem with it isn't so much that it's shocking. I'm not offended so much that it's shocking. It's so boring. I mean, it is such a cliched, unoriginal, predictable, stereotype.
My show is not predictable, and my show is not sterile. I'll tell you that right now.
But it's not very original in terms of it's taking the most cliched approach to sexuality that there is.
No, it's not.
Stereotyping women, contempt for women. You're the American version of the Taliban,
No,
Bubba.
I am the American version of a 38-year-old man, and when men stop being men...
Oh, God help us, I
hear me
hope
out.
not.
When men stop being men and men stop making fun of each other, when Bob and I go on the golf course and he dibs a shot off and I say, Bob, that was a real bad shot, wow. But instead I'm going to say, Bob, that really sucked.
But not all 38-year-old men have contempt
that's
for
how
women.
Men. You don't know how when men are men get together, we talk about sports.
Oh, God help us if that's the way you talk about women.
We have a small heathenistic side to ourselves, and when we stop being hypocrites here and act like what we truly do, why do you think...
Wait, let me interrupt. You may represent a certain slice of American manhood. You certainly don't represent the prime cut.
Well, I appreciate your criticism. What I'm trying to say is I represent a non-hypocritical man who's who's willing to say what's on his mind and not willing to be...
Purveyors of trash always characterize those who object as elitist, and people who want to think that fart sounds are free expression always try to cast it as an honesty issue. If you were really honest, you would just blurt out in public whatever occurred to you 100% of the time. That's not honest. That's not honesty. That's infantile.
Bob, hold on. I do that on my show. Bob, I do that on my show. And the thing about it, Bob, is I have a third of the men 18 plus listening to my show.
I cannot claim to be even partially familiar with your entire oeuvre. However, among your highlight segments was one featuring a man hanging a 25-pound weight over his penis and a play-by-play description. What was your call? Do you believe in miracles? Another segment showing guests and callers discussing oral sex, one in which you sacrificed a virgin on Easter Day, inviting a male 18 years old to have sex with an 18-year-old virgin, and sent a producer to watch and give the show a real-time play-by-play. Now, that is not about sexuality. That's about degradation.
Well, Bob, you can say what you want. It's also about entertainment. I have toned my show down a lot. I have structured my show different.
It's a 15-pound weight now, Bob.
And, you know, boy, it's amazing how Fear Factor can have. My show is South Park meets Jackass, and that's what my show does. And if it didn't work, Bob, and these bits were that offensive, well, they were offensive because you know what? I no longer have a job in terrestrial radio. And I got fined $755,000.
You keep saying it's entertaining. Does entertainment its own reward? In other words, if whatever I do, no matter who it hurts or how they're hurt or whatever the effect is on people at large, if it's entertaining, does that make it okay? Does that cover every other
No,
sin?
Absolutely not. But these are obviously not any. These are not obviously these things that you've brought against me are not anything of assault. I mean, I'm an entertainer. Okay, and I mean, you know, I know that you don't go home and necessarily act this tight-assed when you go home all the time. I'm just telling.
Across as all that tight-ass, Bubba, to tell you the truth.
I don't think you're coming across as being very real. I am. I'm real.
Actually, this is too much about you as an individual. We want to talk about the larger issue. Leave sexuality aside for a moment. Are you at all troubled by the tone of mean-spiritedness that's out there? Ad hominem attacks passing for commentary, that sort of thing.
You know, I barely pass in a generation that's just older than kids now. Not because I'm so young. There was a shift in the culture. My sister's 8 years younger than me. I remember talking to her and her friends in high school, and they're all calling each other bitch. I was like, people don't do that. That's horrible. These are mean kids. And then I sat with them longer, and I realized, well, that's a weird kind of thing in the culture that people are doing now. It makes me uncomfortable. But they're not mean kids. They're nice kids. This is just a culture that's kind of foreign to me, and coarser and tougher, but not meaner.
One of the issues you've written about is the issue of dignity. And by dignity, neither you nor I mean solemnity, sobriety, humorlessness. A person can have no idea what salad fork to use or any social convention. You know, a farmer in a dusty field can have dignity, and a man in a mansion can have none. And there's too little dignity in this society in the best sense of that term.
Yeah, there's too little dignity, and there's too much of a willingness to give away your dignity for a few minutes on Fear Factor, or for a few minutes on some Fox show where you're going to marry some guy that you didn't know 10 minutes ago. I don't understand, you know, the allure of it, or maybe I do understand. Maybe it's this whole idea that you are not validated unless you are on television. Your life is not real unless you are seen by media, unless you have your 15 minutes. It's just sad to me. It's sad to me that people do not have the sense of self-worth that allows them to say, no, I'm not gonna. Yeah. I'm not doing that.
You know, Bob, in the day and age of reality-based everything that we're doing now, and including some of your promos for HBO when you're walking on the streets trying to be an average kind of guy, whether it's real, how you really act or not, you know, Americans appreciate people being real. And if that's
so, that's where you like me in the promo.
I'm not. I used to like you a lot more than I do now. We'll be okay. But let me just tell you.
God, I was worried. I think with counseling and with time, we'll be all right.
Right. Counseling is always a good thing.
Yeah.
So listen to me. But you know, within the day and age of what America does appreciate is all these people on TV and all these people that are being real for once, that are not being these propped up, made up, behind the lights plastic people.
You think reality shows are real?
No.
Doesn't pop culture always basically suck? I mean, the mainstream of pop culture is basically banal and stupid, and this is what young people enjoy.
We're getting old, Bob.
We're getting old. That's that same question about you.
We're getting old. You guys need to really
But it is different now. It really is. It's gone further.
It's different
and also,
to you.
No, it's not
just like it was different to your parents.
No, but and the behavior of kids has changed now, too. And I have a 16-year-old daughter. I'm surrounded by teenagers. I know the kind of things that go on, the kind of things that are happening with girls, for example, who are made to feel terrible about their bodies. They're cutting themselves. They're starving themselves. They're because of all the emphasis on flaunting their sexuality, they're giving oral favors to boys on the school bus on the way to school because this is what they think it means to be sort of attractive and desirable.
But there are riots from the 50s warning you about these very things.
There may have been, but this is happening on a scale that wasn't happening
when
before.
HBO brings back Little House on the Prairie and the Waltons, your case will be valid.
Oh, that's not my case. Don't stereotype me.
We're sort of mixing two things here. We're sort of mixing, okay, you know, liberal behavior, conservative times. So, you know, what are we doing here? That it's not so much this offends me because, oh, I'm scandalized. This offends me because it is so stupid.
You
Whatever they
find it
said,
not entertaining.
whatever anyone said about Elvis, it wasn't, you know, God, this is stupid. This scares me. But
Right.
it was not, this is just so stupid, I can't believe it.
People didn't find Elvis's gyrating to be stupid and
No,
his
they
music
found
to
it.
be
They found it. They
derivative
found it
But now he's the
threatening.
king.
They
And
found it.
noise.
They
But
found
now
it
he's the
sexually.
king.
They found it
was
threatening.
scary.
They found it threatening and scary for a variety of sexual and racial reasons.
Right.
Elvis scared middle white
People
America.
found bebop to be hard.
They found bebop. They found
They found jazz and whatever was called race music to
They
be
found them to be
offensive,
scary
but it had
and offensive.
artistic merit.
They didn't think so. They
But
thought
they
it was
didn't-
just a bunch of noise and people who weren't willing to like learn music and write it down and practice it. I mean, people thought jazz
The
was-
argument, my argument against all of this, I keep saying, is not that I'm offended. It's that it is just so incredibly stupid. It takes me for a moron.
So the last word belongs to you here, Joel. Is this going to get better? Is it going to play itself out? People get bored with this, and
Absolutely
it goes
not.
in a better direction?
No, I mean, it's just going to get more and more sexualized and violent, and I don't think that makes our culture a worse place. I think it's a long continuum.
Joel?
And I'm going to be complaining, if I have kids, to them about how awful their stuff is. We had Fear Factor when I was alive. You know, when I was younger, we had
When you
Fear
were alive,
Factor. Yeah.
are you speaking to them from the crypt?
I got kids. I don't know how this works. Yeah.
Joel Stein, Bubba the Love Sponge, Dr. Gene Kilborn, Leonard Pitts. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.